Greetings everyone, and welcome to Keeping Up with Papa, Life After Work, where we find out how one man manages to keep himself busy, physically active, and mentally engaged after retirement with projects. Today's project hits all three of those square on. First, it's kept me very busy for the last couple of days, and it's going to continue to keep me busy for the next 3 or 4 days. Physically active? Yes. Mentally engaged? Absolutely. In this case, I've had to do a lot of research online, and on top of that, I've had to do a lot of critical math to make sure that what I'm working on actually works the way it's supposed to. What am I working on? Well, I have been drafted by someone to design and to install very large, low-voltage lighting projects for pathways, decks, and for his dock using items kind of like this. Check it out. Time to do the timer of this. Gonna be the problem. Oh, what I have done instead is I use the thing from this outlet over this. Welcome back. A little backstory for you. So some time ago, I did a low voltage lighting project here at my house. It really was just a little bit out front on the house and some stuff going around the side and out to a staircase that goes down towards the lake. And as you may recall, I live on a small lake here in north central Florida. Well, I have a neighbor that for some time has been asking me about the possibility of putting in low voltage lighting at his house. His project was going to be a little bit more sophisticated. He wants to run it from the back deck of his house all the way down to another deck he has at the lake, a separate pathway going down to his dock, and then he has since decided he wants to have a third pathway that comes out the front door, the roadside door, goes around the side of the house, and then meets up with one of the other pathways going down to the dock. Well, he had seen what I had done in my yard, and he likes it. And quite frankly, again, I was very pleased with it as well. So he asked me if I'd be willing to take it on, and hey, of course I said yes. It's another project and involves electricity. The first step, and quite frankly what is probably the most important, is to have a thorough understanding of what it is the homeowner is hoping to accomplish. And you know, in my case, I really didn't know. I just kind of worked my way through it. And in the case of this one, it was pretty much the same thing. He really wasn't entirely sure of what he wanted, except that he knew he wanted a lighting path to go down to the dock, which you see down here, and this deck, which you see down here. So that meant starting up here at the top, at the bottom of the deck, and then working our way down. So what I ended up doing, knowing the casting pattern for the lights that I thought I might like to use, was I marked, as you can see, little red flags everywhere I thought a light could go. That went a long way towards establishing the pattern and the number of lights that I needed. Here you kind of get a feel for just how far of a run we have to make. That was the house up top. We're coming all the way down on this side, cutting through a pathway over here, hanging a sharp left over towards the edge of the property, and then heading down to that dock. And then the same thing applied over here, except that we ended up on a second set of circuitries going down to this small deck down here by the water. And then finally, the dock itself, he would like to have this railing cast light down to the dock so that at night you can walk out on the dock and not trip and fall into the water. So all of this went a long way toward helping me make decisions about what type of light should be used. And what I settled on were hat lights, which cast a large circle of light underneath for those areas where he wanted not to just see the pathway, but areas around the pathway. On the dock, we went with deck lights to shine down. They're hooded and illuminate the dock when you're walking. And then Most of the pathway will have pathway lights that are a 60-degree, sort of a flood. And those lights will point in two different directions. It's a stem with a light on one on each side. And that allows me to put one light down and shine in two different directions. All of these bigger lights, the pathway lights and the hat lights, will have a spread that will cover about 16 feet in either direction, meaning 8 feet from the fixture. That really should work perfectly. So at the same time that I'm deciding what type of lights to use, I needed to decide what company I would use to supply the lighting fixtures. Now, there are multiple choices out there, and quite frankly, the first decision to make is whether or not to go low voltage or to use solar. Well, solar was not practical in this application because there's way too many trees. Plus, I've had too many issues in the past buying solar fixtures and had them die after a year or two, maybe not even that long. So I really felt that low voltage hardwired product was the best way to run in this case. The next question is, what company do we use? And well, in my application at my house, I used a company called Volt, and I'm very pleased with them. Very high quality. I've had them in for about 2 years now. Had one minor warranty claim was where a bulb went bad, and they replaced that without question. So very pleased overall with the quality as well as to how these are built. So, and that to me is a very important point. It's kind of like when I buy tools. For example, I used to buy years ago, say I bought a shovel that was cheap. Well, that shovel would last me 4 or 5 years, and I'd break it and I'd go out and buy another shovel and break it in 4 or 5 years or sooner. If I buy an expensive shovel, well, I'll have that shovel for 20 or 30 years, and unless I do something foolish, which I of course have done many times, but that shovel will last me for a long time, and I will have bought 5 or 6 shovels of the cheap version versus the expensive version and spent a whole lot more money over a 20 or 30 year period of time. So the same thing applies to this. This is not inexpensive. It's probably 2.5 times the cost of what you could buy at the big box stores, but it will be here long after I'm gone. Next decision, which bulbs to use. Well, when you go to the big box stores, you don't have a choice between bulbs. The bulbs are what come with it. In this case, you've got a few decisions you have to make. First, do you want colored bulbs or do you want regular white light bulbs? Second, do you want 2700K bulbs or 3000K bulbs? The difference being that a 2700K is a softer light, 3000 is a little bit brighter light. We chose to go with the 2700s. With the 3000, you might get a little more glare than we would like to have. You have a choice between 2 watt, 3 watt, and 4 watt. Well, we went, in the case of these and these, we went with 4 watt to get more overall lighting coming out. In the case of the little deck lights, we went with 3 watt, which was the highest they offered for the deck light applications. And then you have options on bulbs as far as the amount of spread of the light. Now in the case of the hat light, it didn't matter. It's a round bulb, it just goes out in every direction. In the case of this, you have the option of putting in a 30-degree or a 60-degree bulb. Well, we wanted less of a spotlight and more of a floodlight, so we chose to go with the 60-degree bulbs on this. Lots of decisions to make. Next, which controller do we pick? Well, that kind of depends on how many watts you're consuming in your circuitry. In this case, we're consuming some just shy of 200 watts. Now, you can get these starting out around 150 watts. There's a 300 watt version, a 600 watt version, a 900 watt, and a 1200 watt version. Well, we could have gotten away with a 300 watt version because, again, I'm pulling about 200 watts, and that would have given me a little bit of headroom left over. But I also wanted the ability to future-proof this application, meaning that at some point, should the homeowner decide he wants to add more lights in other locations, we have a controller big enough to handle any expansion that might occur. So we went with the 600 watt version. Also, you have to decide whether or not you want a photocell and a timer. In the case of the photocell, it'll mount over here on the side and plugs in where this little unit is here, right here, this little piece of wire. Photocell will turn it on at dark and turn it off at dawn. And in this particular case, I'm also going to put it on a switch, a wall switch, so that if he decides that at night he doesn't want those lights on, the photocell is telling it to come on, the wall switch will turn the entire set of circuitry off. And then you can look at getting a timer as well. So you could actually set a timer up in here, which plugs in over here, and that timer will just tell it to come on at 6 p.m. and go off at 11 p.m. That's a reasonable option as well. So we have our lights, we have picked our bulbs, we picked which controller we want to use. Now we need to do our electrical budget for each circuit. Not really all that complicated, but it does take a little bit of thinking your way through all this. And I found a really nice chart online. I just Googled something to the effect of low voltage lighting wiring runs and came up with a formula that I could use for the different types of wire. That helped me pick both my wire and the maximum amount of length I could have for each one of those circuits. I took and drew myself a map, and I did this multiple times. It just, I tried it one time, didn't like the way it worked out, tried it another time, and I ended up actually with 4 different circuits going down towards the lake from his house. And it's budgeted each one based on the number of watts that are on it and the length of run. You can only have so many watts on your length of run before you start to have voltage drop. And both of those characteristics affect the amount of voltage drop that you have. Too many watts, too much voltage drop. Too long of a length, you also affects your voltage drop. So you have to figure all of that out. It ended up actually being pretty simple once I got to the end. You have to be able to come up with accurate distances, or fairly accurate distances from point A to point B. So I did that with a measuring wheel. It's something I have around for other applications from time to time, and it worked out really well. And it was very important and much easier than trying to deal with a tape measure. My longest run was 330 feet. Using this made life a lot simpler than trying to lay it all out with a tape. One other really important item is these dry con connectors. Now these are essentially just a wire nut, but once you've attached them, they can be buried underground. There's a sealant inside, and they protect the wire from the elements. You've heard me mention several times that voltage drop is a major issue for long runs and lots of light fixtures on a run. Well, the controller manufacturer has come up with a way around that, and that's by putting taps in that have progressively higher voltage ratings on them. So if you have a really long run where you're going to lose a lot of voltage and you've got a lot of fixtures on that run, you can move from a 12-volt tap all the way up to a 15-volt tap, and by the time you get to the end of the run, you're still holding 12 volts, even though you may have lost a volt or two over the entire length of the run. Really helps simplify things, and quite frankly, I probably could have gotten away with a lesser gauge wire by using this. So now I have my electrical plan. Hey, probably the most important part of the entire process. So now all I have to do is install 39 lights, bury 960 feet of wire, and then get it all to work. Let's get started. Beautiful day to be working outside. I mean, sunny, no wind, 75 degrees. I think Mother Nature is setting us up for something. Gonna mount the deck lights now. Got a few of them up already, a few more to go. These come with a couple of screws. Nice, they're stainless. Also interesting because they come with 25 feet of wire. These are typically used in applications, people that have those PVC poles and decks. So the PVC pole is over a regular 4x4, and then there's a cavity you can slip the wire down inside of. So that's one reason they give you so much wire. a lot more than I need. I'm going to have to kind of figure out if I can use this or not, because it's only 16 gauge. And again, I am 330 feet from the controller here. So I'm not so sure that I'm going to be able to make this work. But if I can use this wire, I will. Alright, so I've already gone along and set my locations. I pre-drilled the holes. And it's now just a matter of feeding the wire through here, because the wiring will be done behind and hidden, kept hidden. Take these apart, a little twist, and it pops open. There's a gasket inside here. You have to be sure that you don't lose that. And then it's just a matter of screwing it in. There's an arrow in here that shows up or top. Helps me keep my alignment perfect. Once that's in, you install your bulb here. I'm going to come back and do that later. Do them all at once. All done. A little sidebar here. This is apparently a popular lake for the Indians thousands of years ago. We find lots of artifacts, flint chips. This was probably an attempt at an arrowhead that failed, or some sort of a cutting tool. We find a lot of them on the beaches when the waves come in and wash the sand, or we do some tilling. All the lights are now mounted on the railing. You can see them running down. There's 8 of them run all the way down to the end. And then I have 2 here at the very end of the dock, and I'm honestly not quite sure where I want to put those. For the moment, I put them there. And they cast mainly down, and I'm wondering if there's not a better way for me to mount them so they cast out more. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a lot of line on these and give me the ability to move them a little bit later after I've got them actually working. See if maybe there's a better spot for them. So here's how the wiring is going to go. The end of this is already stripped, so just a matter of pulling that off and splitting the wires. So you have some working room. I'm going to twist these guys together nice and tight. There will be 3 wires coming together at each one of these lights. One from the downstream light, one from the upstream light, and one from the light that you're wiring. You don't want to just wire them in series, you want to wire them in parallel. If you wire them in series where you just basically take a wire, come into here, then go back out, by the time you get to the end of the run, you'll have what I guess you would describe as parasitic loss. There'll be a brighter light at one end and it get dimmer and dimmer as you go. You've got to wire them in parallel so they're all feeding equally off the circuit. Look that up if you don't understand it. Alright, so I'm going to allow myself about, a little bit of working room, a foot or so. Okay, so here's my wire coming from the light downstream. This is my wire coming from the light that I'm working on. And this is the wire which will now be going to the next wire in the, the next light in the circuit. So Volt has a lot of good videos online to teach you how to do this. And you'll see this wire is ridged on one and smooth on the other. So you want your ridged wires all hooked together and your smooth wires all hooked together. So here's the ridged one, here's the ridged one. And the third one over here, which is on the ground. There's the ridged one. And I saw a neat little trick where you line it up, circle it around, bring it back like this, and it kind of helps to ensure everything locks together. So I normally at this point I would be using one of these sealed wire nuts to seal this off. I don't want to do that just yet because I'm not entirely certain how well this is going to work, so I'm just going to do a test circuit on it first, meaning that I was going to go to the garage and get some wire nuts I had there. I have a great big bottle of them, a box of them, and I got in there, and you know where they are? Well, neither do I. I couldn't find them, so I'm just going to do this for the moment and hope for the best. Don't know what that was. That was either a really big bass or an otter. The sun should be down in about 20 minutes, and I'm building up to a test here. I'd like to see if these things work or not, so I'm going to go ahead and put bulbs in 8 of them. I'm not sure if these are like halogens where you're not supposed to touch them. I washed my hands just to be safe, try and get as much oil off as possible. And then I'm going to grab the glass with a paper towel. They're just 2-prong, very easy to plug in. Can't really see it, but the line's up there. And like I just said, they're very easy to, there you go. Very easy to plug in. It's done. This is a very simple, line it up and spin it. 6 more. So as a test, I am hooking up 8 of the lights that are on the dock and this one hat light over here, which I put the bulb in. So I decided to make the rough wires power and the smooth wires common. And I don't think it really matters at all. This is not sensitive to polarity. Alright, there's my common. And I'm just going to hook it up to the 12 volt line. That's the closest one. There's plenty of room inside these connectors here to add multiple lines. Alright, that's good. So, some of you may be familiar with my Bluetti solar generator, and I have a video on this as well. I use it a lot for camping. And right now it's turned on, but the AC is not turned on. So, in theory, when I hit the AC button, this light should light up. Here we go. Oops, didn't come on. There we go. Now there are a couple of switches. One's for the timer. I would guess that's where it is. That's not it. Oh, photocell light. Let's go walk down the dock and see if any of those other lights are on. Alright, light number 1 is working. Light number 2 is working. And yes. Alright, a successful day today. I am going to leave everything hooked up and come out and look at this in the dark. But I'm very happy with how this is working out so far.
Now we've reached one of the more difficult physical parts of the process, and that's stripping this 8-gauge wire. I have wire strippers, and they say 8 gauge, but if you crimp them all the way down, they take a lot of strands with it. So I actually went to an electrical supply store, and they sold me another set of the same thing I already had, which are, by the way, very nice wire strippers. And they just didn't have anything to do what I wanted to do. So what I've found is that if I lightly press down, I can feel the last little bit of a cut that occurs. And if I don't take big bites but small bites, I can strip it. And even then, it's just not easy. So, let's see if I can get this one for demonstration purposes. There you go. So here's the slug that came off. And you can see it took some wire with it. But if I'm careful, it doesn't take a lot of wire. So that is, I think, acceptable at this point. All right, so I'm coming in at this point with a lead going down to the lake and a lead going up to the box, the controller box. And I have to mate those two together and then also mate in the wire for the light. Okay, so I cut the wire for the light extra long. You'll see why here in a moment. And I don't want to match these up. So the smooth one is the one with printing on it, and the less smooth one, it doesn't really have much of a ridge to it, is the one without printing on it. So that's kind of what I'm running with. So I've got printing here, and I'm just tying these wires together and give them a little boost there with the pliers. And then I take my smooth wire lead off the light, which, by the way, is also not got a lot of definition to which one's smooth and which one's not, but this one appears to be the rougher of the two. And bringing it up to here, doing one wrap around, that's why it's extra long, and then coming up here and doing my wraps around the bundle and giving a little extra. Comparing length here, I'm going to be okay on my depth there, but I still would like to take a tiny bit off of this, not much. And then my wire nut, and you'll see the silicone inside that seals it. And give it a couple of good turns. That's good. Give it a tug. No issue. Works great. Okay. So I have the run. This run is now all the way up to the house and this is where I'm planning to mount this controller. So I always like to test things and make sure it's working okay. This is the one run that has me worried more than any other. It's because it is about 330 feet to the end of the dock, and this is the one with the greatest potential for a lot of voltage drop. So now if I had run all these lines all the way up down to the end of the dock in this 8 gauge, I don't think I'd have any problem at all. But what I have done instead is I used the 16 gauge that came on the deck fixtures and on the lights once I got down to the lights. And so my theory here is that A, I'm carrying plenty of current from here down to the first light, and then B, I'm using this 15 volt tap. So I'm boosting the voltage a little bit. So we're going to try it and see if it works or not. Here's the first light in the circuit. It's working. It's a very good sign. And there's the last light on the circuit. It is nicely lit up. So I have good light all the way down to the end. Now I'll be out here this evening after dark checking that the brightness is actually there as well. We looked at the bulbs on the deck. Now these are how the bulbs go in on these hat lights. They're 4 watt instead of 3 watt. The fixture handles a little bit more voltage, puts out a little bit more light. Assembling this, nothing to it. It is, as it says, a hat light, and little hat that goes on top. Put on a little washer and screw on the top, and you're done. As I may have mentioned previously, I finished the first leg on these double lights, and now I've got 2 more legs to do. I'm going around at this point and I'm putting all the bulbs in. It's a pretty chilly day here today, and quite frankly, I don't much care to be outside. And to be honest with you, this is Florida, so pretty chilly for me is got down to 34 last night, and it's getting up to about 60, and anything below 50, I'm not much for outdoor work. Moving all this around, there's a bolt on one side here, and then this fixture, this right here, allows you to spin this in any direction you want. So by doing so, you can adjust up and down and left and right and point where you want to point. Hood in place. Bulb cover comes off. Bulbs are here also forever. LED bulbs, they should never burn out. If they do, they're covered under warranty. The company will replace them for you at no charge. Just plug right in. Reassemble. Then we'll be out when I have power to it and adjust the aim. Well, now I have moved on to wiring these double lights. Now this is 10 gauge wire instead of 8 gauge wire. So it's quite a bit easier to work with. The wire cutters actually strip it, only taking maybe a strand or two from time to time. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of giving myself a little bit of a service loop here. I'm going past the light, okay? And then when I hook it all up, I pull this other wire in and give myself a bit of a service loop about like this. And then that'll tie in with this third wire and, give me some room to work around a little bit later if for some reason I should need some slack. This is the electrical hookup. Right now I'm just running power with a plug down to test the wires. What I'll be doing is jumping from this outlet over to this box and supplying power to the circuit off of here. I measured and decided I needed 87 feet of wire. Well, it turns out that I needed 100 feet of wire because that's what I bought, and this is all I have left, which will jumper over to here perfectly when I'm done. As you can see, I'm using conduit to run up to here, which is to the bottom of the joist on the deck. Then I'm running up through the deck and up to a switch on the wall up above. Then from here it is conduit down into the ground, trenched over to the deck, and then conduit coming up out from under the trench, and then I'm tacking to the deck underneath, and then I'll be going way over there up to that pole to the control box. This is not tacked down yet, I'll get to that here shortly, but I'm coming out from under the deck using conduit to go up to the bottom of the next level of the deck. Running over here, again, not all tacked down, and then coming down through conduit, which will go into a box, which will be right here. Next is the control box, or more appropriately, the transformer. What has to be wired in here is obviously the wires that feed the 3 circuits I have. I have a 3/4 inch pipe going down into the ground, which then in turn breaks off into these. These obviously still have to be buried. And then we've also added in a photocell. So the photocell, there's a knockout there. It just goes to the knockout, then it plugs in here where this little loop was before. Okay, and whenever once you remove this cap, of course, whenever the sun starts going down and it starts to get dark, the system will turn on. In the morning, the system will turn off, or the homeowner has the option of turning it off at a switch at the wall up at his back door. You may have seen this on some of my other videos. This is called a council tool. It's used by firefighters that fight wood fires. And it is a really useful tool. It does a great job pulling this dirt back. Much easier than with a shovel. Well, I smartened up and went and got my boots. Oh yeah, big difference. Well, that's it. I am finished. Or am I? Well, apparently not. Last minute change from the homeowner. He'd like to have this palm tree over here lit up at night, so I've ordered a nice flood, which I think will do the trick. I have similar floods for uplighting trees at my house. And that should come in tomorrow. You can see the spool over here on the ground. I've already got it all wired up and ready to roll. I just need to cut it to the proper length, try out a few different positions at night to make sure that we get the effect that we want, and then bury that along with the wire. Then I'll be finished, hopefully. So, how did it turn out? Well, here, take a look. Now just keep in mind that these are long exposures, so the brightness you see is not really quite that bright in real time. Nonetheless, the lighting works perfectly and it performs exactly as we hoped it would. The dock? Well, the dock lights give just enough light to allow you to see well as you make your way down the dock at night without being overwhelming. The pathway lights do the same. And the uplighting on the palm tree, hey, it's just perfect. Just out of curiosity, I took a look at the installation from across the lake, and it really looks good. Not at all inappropriate. The same from each neighbor's yard. All in all, a very successful installation. So what'd you think? Nice, eh? Hey, that was 49 man-hours of labor to get all this done, and it was worth every minute. It absolutely looks beautiful at night. Are we done? You know, yes, I think we are for the moment. However, at the very last minute, the homeowner decided, at my suggestion, to add 2 lights on the front side of the house so that when they step outside, they can see a little better going around the corner and coming down to the lake. We also decided at the last minute to add a timer to the transformer box. Why? Well, should the homeowner neglect to turn the lights off before he goes to bed, the timer will take care of that function for him. The only problem is that if the power goes out, the timer loses track of time, and therefore it'll be coming on and off at the wrong time, so you have to reset it. And around here, the power goes off every 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm currently looking into options for a timer that will resolve that issue. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and another project successfully completed. As always, comments, questions, and advice are welcome. Please remember to like and share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Keeping Up with Papa, Life After Work. Papa out.